So thanks everyone for joining us today. It's going to be a session around exploring the differences between Power Platform and Fabric. It should be around about a 40-minute session. We're hoping to be as true to time as we possibly can. The session really today is for sort of anyone who's already using Microsoft, or if you're new to the sort of Microsoft ecosystem. This session shall hopefully give you a bit of a clearer understanding of how Power Platform and Fabric can work together, and also sort of the differences between the two platforms, because we do sometimes get a bit of confusion when talking about them. So a little bit of housekeeping for the session today. Everybody is on mute, so it's a listen-only session, but there is a Q&A and a chat panel, so please do use that, put questions in there, and if there is a little gap in between, we can get to them. If not, we have saved sort of 5 minutes at the end for a dedicated Q&A session. Quick round of introductions. Gareth, you just chuck us on the next slide, please. Perfect. So I'm Alex. Hopefully most of you know I am already, but I'm the Business Development Manager here at Climber UK. And then we've got Gareth, who's one of our lead data consultants, who focuses on the Microsoft platforms, also has a varied background in multiple other tools and platforms that we work with. Not going to go into too much detail around who we are. Hopefully most of you that are on the session today know us, but a super high level background of Climber. We were founded in 2007. We've got offices all across Europe. We have what we call the Climber Academy, which is our dedicated training platform, and that covers the Microsoft Power BI training and also Click. We have a number of customers across the group in various different sectors. We're around 100 strong in terms of team size, and then we work with sort of multiple different on-prem, cloud, hybrid solutions. And then we also have a dedicated support desk, which is the expert services team. So that's as much sort of super high level sort of salesy bit that's ever going to be on this session today. A super quick sort of agenda, just to give you a bit of an idea of what the sort of key takeaways are before I hand over to Gareth. But we're going to sort of go, like I say, an overview of the Power Platform and Microsoft Fabric, the key differences between the two, how they can complement each other, so how you can use one to feed the other, and then a couple of real world use cases and some sort of live examples of how we are seeing these being used in customers today. Before we start, I'm just going to quickly launch a poll just around, get a bit of a feel for the room of if you're using Power Platform at the moment and what you're doing with the Microsoft stack. So if you could all, if I just chuck that poll up now and launch it, hopefully everyone can see that, and then we can hand over to Gareth to kick us off with today's session.
All good?
Almost. I'm just watching the percentage of voters increase.
Okay.
So we're currently over the halfway mark. So, and it's pretty strong across the top end.
Well.
So just wait for a final few. 70% so far. I don't know if everyone should be able to see that, because last couple of voters now, and I think that's probably the best we're going to get. 75% just short of. So oh, there we go. So okay, so there's quite a few that are still evaluating, probably just under half that are still evaluating what they're doing. There's a small chunk that aren't using it, or the sort of Power Platform is more for the use cases, and then we've got a small percentage that have already implemented it. So a bit of a mixed bag. Awesome. Thanks everyone for doing that. And without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Gareth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alex, can you see the presentation all right, Alex? It's still on. Yep.
Sorry, I went on mute then. Yeah, all good.
So today we're just going to go through the Power Platform and Fabric, and just go through the differences between the two. We'll go through a couple of use cases now, where you would choose, will help you choose which platform's better suited to a specific use case, and then we'll go through Fabric, what Fabric is, what Power Platform is, and then I've got a little bit of a demo right at the end where we exchange data between the two platforms. So pull data from Fabric into Power Platform and vice versa. So yeah, what are the platforms for? So the Power Platform is for app development and process automation. So this is workflow automation, where we normally have manual processes. People are printing things out, manually filling in spreadsheets and sending them via email, etc. Power Platform is designed to be able to automate those processes, and as part of it, and is can be used really well as part of a digital transformation program in your business. Fabric is for data management, analytics, AI powered insights. So Fabric is mainly for large reads of data where we have, for in a retail example, lots and lots of transactions. We want to be able to do aggregations on those transactions or find insights or look for outliers in those transactions. We don't necessarily need to interact with it. We just need to read the data. So you can see here on this slide, the data for Power Platform is stored in what's called Dataverse. So imagine Dataverse is a easy to use version of SQL Server, but optimized in a way like OLTP database. So for anybody who can remember way back when, we used to have OLTP and OLAP databases. So an OLTP database is optimized for users to interact with specific data. So they're doing inserts of new data, or they are looking up a certain column in a row and doing updates on that data. Whereas an OLAP database stands for Online Analytical Processing, and that's optimized for doing large reads of data. So when we're trying to do reporting, aggregations, and trying to look for insights, run AI tools over the top of the data, we need something that's optimized for those reads rather than interacting at row level. Both Fabric and Dataverse can seamlessly exchange data between each other. So you can use the strengths of either in each one, but you can still use them as standalone products as well. So the first scenario I've got here is employee onboarding. So I'm sure most people are familiar when you start an organization and you need to fill in address details, HR details, payment details, bank accounts, things like that. Often we're sent an Excel form and told to fill that out. We fill in the Excel form. It's sent to various different people, and then those people are inputting that data into the various systems that we've got within the business. In this example, it's Workday for the HR and Xero for the finance, for payroll. In this scenario, we have employees that it's a manual process. So they're updating or inserting rows in Excel spreadsheets. So the way that they're interacting with the data is either at very specific row level or they're inserting new rows in the data. So for this specific scenario, we would recommend a Power Apps solution, which would digitize the process from end to end. We create a Power App with a new employee form in there. That would be automatically linked to Active Directory. So as the employee logged in, it would know who they are straight away. The data would be saved into Dataverse because the user is, again, updating or inserting rows into the data. And then from Dataverse, we can trigger some Power Automate integration. So once the employee has submitted the form, we can actually use Power Automate to automatically add their details into the core systems, Workday and Xero. And then we can also use the integration with Office 365 to send Teams or email notifications. And we can even put in approval processes in this as well. So it could actually notify somebody to make an approval and then insert the data into the core systems. So really good way of digitizing a manual process, but it's normally when users are interacting with the data that we would need a Power Apps solution, so a Power Platform solution. The second scenario that we've got is sales performance and forecasting. So a company wants to improve sales performance analytics and forecasting. Currently, they download the transactions from the ERP system. So actually go into the ERP system itself, in this case SAP, download the transactions, take in lots and lots and lots of rows of data from it, from downloading it from the database. Then aggregating those transactions. So again, using Excel to do aggregations of those transactions. In this scenario, those aggregated the transaction volume is so great, it's going beyond the RAM limits of people's laptops, for example. So then they're doing analysis on subsets of those aggregated transactions to be able to do that analysis, because they haven't got the firepower, or Excel hasn't got the ability to do it over the full the full sales transactions from the business. So then you've got decision makers that are looking at those aggregated transactions and then updating orders back into SAP based on what they can see in the aggregated transactions. So lots of manual processes, lots of time consuming, and somebody's coming in a morning and doing this kind of thing. So you're looking at late afternoon before people can actually start making decisions on the data. In this case, it's a process where we're reading large amounts of rows in Excel spreadsheets. So in this scenario, we would recommend a Fabric solution. So they're currently in a Fabric solution. We can use Data Factory to load data automatically from the sales transactions from the ERP system. We can load that into a Synapse data warehouse, and we can use machine learning models. Now, because we're utilizing Fabric and we've got a proper data warehouse in place, we can actually start complementing the sales data with other data as well, with other variables. So here we're loading weather data from an API and some supply chain data from Blue Yonder as well. So we can create machine learning models that better predict the sales based on a number of different variables, rather than a cut down and aggregated Excel version, which is just based on purely based on past historic sales. So we can train those learning models, get that data into Power BI, and then the decision makers can look at Power BI. They can see the sales forecast across all categories rather than just individual categories for each person. They can see all categories, make a selection in a slicer to be able to see specific categories if they want to. And they can even take this a step further. And when we've trained these learning models and we have a level of confidence in these learning models, we can actually start implementing some automation at this point, where from end to end, the orders are automatically just adjusted. So we cut the Power BI and we cut the decision maker out, and we can just adjust the orders based on what the sales forecast is automatically end to end through Microsoft through Fabric. So just to recap, what are the platforms for? Power Platform is for app development, process automation. Fabric is for data management, analytics, and AI insights. So Power Platform is ideal when we want to gather data from users or enable them to interact with specific areas of data or insert new rows, whereas Fabric is better for reading and analyzing very large data sets and extracting insight from the data that we already have.
I think another point as well you mentioned on the Power Platform, the lot of the use cases that we're seeing for that from customers is around sort of digitizing manual processes. So where there's carbon copy paper involved, or forms and filing and all that kind of thing, that is where we're seeing a lot of the real life use cases come from customers, is sort of digitizing those processes.
Absolutely, yep. So it's a very, very powerful tool just because of the ability to rapidly build these applications. It then makes it, I think previously you would look at a process and say, well, if we needed a team of consultants or a team of software developers to come in, you're looking at a 6 months, 7 month, 8 month project to create a piece of software and then it becomes unviable because it'll cost far too much to try and digitize that process. Power Platform is so rapid for the development that it actually starts becoming cost efficient to be able to digitize the process, create an application, get that out to the users, and then start looking at where else you can start putting power apps throughout the business as well. So yeah, it's changing the game for sure.
Just before you jump on, Gareth, I've got a question
Yeah.
on that. So Becca's asked, how can you adjust sales transactions based on a forecast from machine learning? Could you just sort of cover that piece again, if possible?
So we're not adjusting the sales transactions. That piece, I'm not sure how to go back on here. That piece was adjusting the orders. So future orders, you've got you're placing orders with suppliers based on what the sales forecast is. You adjust what you're ordering depending on demand that you expect. So that would automatically, you could put some machine learning models in place that would take in extra variables and not just previous sales history and a person's intuition, but it would also, if you're aiming to be a data-driven business, these are the types of things that you want to look at because you want to be able to bring those extra variables in. If you're a retailer, for example, that's heavily affected by the weather, you want to see, find an example, a garden centre, for example, who you would expect if it's nice and sunny, you'll get lots of people buying plants, and if it's not so many. So you can make that sales prediction based on those extra variables and then adjust the amount that you're ordering with your suppliers based on that sales forecast. That makes
Yeah, and I
sense.
think as well, you'd end up comparing those in a follow up. You'd compare your machine learning model against the sales transactions to see how accurate it was, and that would be like a next stage, would it?
Absolutely. So part of this
Yeah,
machine learning model would be the continual training of that machine learning model, and it would
yeah,
only when you got to a degree of confidence in that machine learning model that you would ever trust to leave it to its own devices. Most I don't really know any businesses that actually 100% trusts a machine learning model to do that. They've always tried like to keep a human in the loop, and that's where Power BI comes in because we can put the results of the sales forecast in Power BI, and then a user can you know view that and say, yeah, I agree with that or not.
awesome, cool. Well, I'll let you move on. All right.
Okay. So where does Power BI come into all of this? So Power BI sits in between both of the platforms. Power BI is the front end BI data visualization tool from Microsoft. It's still an independent, and it can still be used as an independent and a standalone product. There's absolutely no requirement. I think anybody who's using Power BI at the moment will see if the Fabric's plastered everywhere within the Power BI service now. That's not to say that you can't continue using Power BI service without Fabric. It's absolutely remains a standalone solution. So but what it does do is the end products of any Fabric implementation that you've got, or the end product of any Power Platform implementation you've got, the data can be loaded very easily with standard connectors into Power BI to be able to do analysis of the outcomes of that data. So in Fabric, we could do a machine learning model for it in that example and load the results into Power BI. In Power Platform, we can have that front end app, but we can also load, the number of employees that of going through that process into Power BI. So HR have got some sort of BI over the top of the process as well. So it can still be used as a standalone service is the main takeaway. So Fabric overview. So Fabric does it all. It's in one unified solution. But before Fabric was launched, Microsoft had lots and lots of different BI products, data warehousing products, but they were all licensed separately and all over the place in Azure. Really, what Fabric has aimed to do is make all those products talk to each other a lot easier, but also license the products a lot easier as well. So if you buy a Microsoft Fabric license, you get access to all of these products as part of that. There's some technical stuff on Power BI licensing, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, essentially, you've got one license that will give you access to all of these different products in Microsoft Fabric, and then you just pay for the storage underneath as well. So simplifying simplifying the Microsoft BI stack. Components are Data Factory. So anyone who's used SSIS before will be familiar with building pipelines and things like that. Data Factory is essentially a combination of pipelines and data flows, which enables you to pull the data into Fabric, but also transform it, manipulate it, and make it ready for reporting, BI, and AI. Data engineering. This allows you to perform more complex transformations for preparing, managing the data and also the data quality. You can use notebooks where we use PySpark or SQL to do that kind of stuff. The data warehouse where we store all the data. So traditional data warehouse with fact tables and stuff, but it's a lot easier to set up these data warehouses, make tactical data warehouses that aim for specific use cases. We're not limited to creating this huge one picture of the business data warehouse. It takes years and years and years to build the data warehouse, and by the time we've built it, it's now out of date. The data warehouse, the data science we've covered with machine learning models, real-time analytics, so we can stream data. So if you've got any real-time processing that you need to do, we can use real-time analytics. Data activator, so this will monitor the data as it comes in, and it will trigger alerts based on what's happening inside the data. So we can set up patterns, KPI tolerances, and things like that. And we can use the Office 365 suite to notify people that things have gone in or out of tolerance. Power BI, which we've covered, and then OneLake, which just stores all of the data that is being used within the Fabric ecosystem. So yeah, it's a unified product rather than provisioning and managing separate computes for each workload. With Fabric, you get two bills, one for your compute, and you can do that as a pay-as-you-go or a 1 year reservation. The 1 year reservation is actually 41% cheaper than going on pay-as-you-go, so it is worthwhile doing if you can. The storage is OneLake, pay-as-you-go, and it's currently 12 pence per gigabyte to store things in OneLake. Anybody who's already using Power BI, so Power BI licensing becomes Fabric. So if anybody's already on a P1 capacity SKU, so P1 capacity now becomes F64 in Fabric, and what happens at that level is at F64 level in Fabric or P1, everybody in the business gets viewer access to Power BI. So you still have to license as your developers with a pro license, but then the F64 SKU, the P1 SKU F64 will give everybody in the business access to be able to view the dashboard and the reports in the Power BI service as well. In Fabric, we implement a Medallion architecture. So we build a structure to help us ingest the data and then present that data for AI and analytics at the other end. The Medallion architecture consists of a bronze, silver, and gold layer. The bronze lakehouse is the raw ingestion layer. So we pull the data directly from source systems. We do nothing to it. We just store it in the bronze layer, and that's available for the silver layer to start processing. Once we pull the data into the silver layer, that's when we start doing data transformation, data quality, changing fields, making sure, quarantine transactions, things like that. This is a really cleaned and refined layer. It retains all of the history in there, and we just keep adding to it. And that is available for that. Keeping that history makes it available for all our machine learning or AI models that need access to larger amounts of data than we normally need in every day-to-day reporting. The gold layer is the presentation layer. It's optimized for analytics and reporting. It is reduced to only the data that we require for the reporting to make the experience as fast as possible for the end user to be able to get those actionable insights and to be able to make decisions on the data quickly. So we'll only bring in the data that we require for for this layer, and with inside Fabric, we can build these. We don't need a all-encompassing gold warehouse. We can build individual gold warehouses for specific areas of the business or for specific use cases as well. So it's not limited to having to spend lots of time building. We can build these tactical gold data warehouses. And we can give end users access to these gold data warehouses and endorse the data in there. So we can endorse the data warehouse and say, we are happy for people to go away, point their Power BI dashboards at that gold data warehouse. And we are confident that anything that they produce from there, if we try to match the numbers back to any other reporting, it would be the uniform number across the business. And then Power Platform and Fabric. So we can streamline the creation of automated workflows. We've got Power Apps, Power Platform, and we've got Fabric, and Fabric can pull data out of there. So as part of that work, as part of some of our workflows, we can have applications that are saving data into Dataverse. If we need that for reporting and we want to be able to do some analysis on that, then we can bring that into Fabric as well, and it will complement the existing data in Fabric. So we can start building, more in-depth insights on and get a better business view of our data. This is what a new Fabric implementation, stereotypical Fabric implementation would look like. So we discover the data, we move through the data factory, move through data factory pipelines to ingest the data and move it into the OneLake, and then we can use Synapse data engineering or carry on using data factory, depending on how complex we need to do the transformations, but we can use those tools to move the data from a bronze, silver, and into a gold data warehouse layer. So there we've got Synapse Data Science working across the silver layer with all the history in there. Both of those layers, the gold layer and the Synapse Data Science, are making the data available for Power BI analytics. Data Activator, which can monitor that data within the different pipelines and then send alerts out via Office and notifications to say that things have refreshed or that things are beyond tolerance. And there we can see that you've also got Power Apps and Dataverse collecting data, using the gold warehouse as a data source, collecting data from users and then pushing that data back into the gold warehouse as well. With Fabric, we get an extra load type in Power BI. So Power BI used to support two modes, import mode and direct query. Import mode would pull the data from wherever the source system was, save the data within inside the PBIX file itself, and then you would publish that up. So it would keep the data inside the in memory inside the Power BI model itself. Direct query would just show you direct query would be like a window into the database, so you'd be able to make a selection, and when you made a selection, Power BI would go off to the database, rerun a query, and then bring the results back. So depending on what your systems were like, it really was dependent on what the performance was there, and often quite slow, to be honest. And then we go with Fabric, we get an extra mode called Direct Lake mode. So once we've moved all of our data through that Medallion architecture and moved it to a gold data warehouse, we can use what's called Direct Lake mode to point it at that gold data warehouse where we've already predefined what the data model should look like. So the semantic model is already built. We can point it to there, and then the users, when they're interacting with the Power BI application, it will actually be going back to the data warehouse to get answers. And from the testing that we've done, it's comparable to import mode. It really is that quick at getting live answers. Yeah, you then don't have any refresh. You don't have to set up any refresh schedules and things like that because it's got a direct link into the warehouse. Once the warehouse is refreshed, all the reporting that's in direct link mode will also be up to date as well.
Just conscious of time, guy. We've got about 6.5 minutes left. All right, mate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll quickly run through Power Apps and then get to the demo then. Yeah, Power Platform is a bunch of different tools that you can build your own applications on. There's two main types of applications: a model-driven app or a Canvas app. Canvas app allows you to I don't know why that's not been it, but a Canvas app allows you to, it's really flexible, and it allows you to do drag and drop and pull different components into an application and then put code behind and actions behind those components. There's some key advantages there, but we'll share these out when after the webinar. Model-driven apps, these are these are based on a data-centric approach. So we define the data and the structure of the data before we start building the app. But what Power Apps does, it makes it very easy to skin those tables that we've already predefined with an application over the top. And it maintains a level of it's the same look and feel for all of your applications as well. Power Apps picks up where other solutions fall short. So if you've got a specific use case that you want to be able to do something, you go to SAP. SAP say it'll cost hundreds of thousands of pounds to be able to do it, or a recent one that we've done, the warehouse management system, they were quoted over £100,000 to be able to do tasks, monitoring the tasks that people are doing. But instead of doing that customization in the warehouse management system, you can exchange data with the warehouse management system in Power Apps, do the actual task that you want to do in Power Apps, and just keep sending and receiving data between the system. So you can build that functionality much cheaper than customizations of big ERP systems or warehouse management systems. We can use Power Apps to create a unified employee interaction experience. So if people are familiar with starting a big company, you've got lots and lots of different systems, and they're all got different interfaces and things, and the training and getting used to using them can take months, if not years, to become an expert in all of these. What we can do is we can use Power Apps to actually provide the same user interface for the user, and then they don't even realize which system they're actually interacting with at this point. And then we've got the power so we can integrate Fabric and Power Platform by exchanging data between Fabric and Dataverse. So I'll just quickly turn my camera off. So I'll just quickly talk through this demo. So you can see I've got a Medallion architecture here in Fabric. I've got a bronze, silver warehouse. I've got Power Apps, and I want to pull some Fabric data into Power Apps. So if I go into my gold warehouse, I can see that I've got two tables, one of which is pending orders. So if I go into, if I just quickly query the pending orders, you can see that I have some data in that table in my gold warehouse. So I want to be able to use that and show that in one of the Power Apps that I'm building. So if I go to tables, I can create a virtual table. There's a connectors there, and you can see one of them is Microsoft Fabric. So click next. Now I need to know what the Fabric workspace is where I want to get the data from. So I can look there and see Fabric development is the workspace. So I can select that from the drop down, and I select it's the gold wet lakehouse that I want to get the data from. I can see my tables there, so I'll select pending orders, and then I want to configure the column names. So I don't want Fabric to just Power Apps to just do it. I want to be able to have some control over what they're going to be called. So if I give it just the prefix of Fabric, so everybody knows that it's data coming from Fabric. Happy with the primary key of order ID, and you can see I just review what the setup is, click finish, and then the two products, the two platforms will be joined together inside that virtual table. So now I have all of that pending order data available to all of my Power Apps. If we go into Power Apps, we can add this data. So I can quickly add Fabric pending orders as a data source now. Add a gallery. And I can start building out a gallery based on the data coming directly from the Fabric table. So that if, for example, I had some master data inside Fabric, we've done lots of data quality, data checking. We've got, we've really manipulated the data and made it ready for analytics. We don't want to have to replicate doing the exact same thing with Power Automate to bring that data into Power Apps. So what we can do here is we can link Power Apps to Fabric, and we're confident that we have one version of the truth between both platforms for any particular data set that we want to be able to share between the two. So, yep, fairly straightforward. And both platforms will just maintain that connection going forward. Next, we want to be able to bring data from Power Apps into Fabric. So maybe we want to do some, so here I've got a table called accident log, and we can see it's an accident logging application that we've got. There's some data in there. We can go into our gold warehouse. Because we've already performed, check-in before people have been able to submit that data, we're confident that we don't need to do any transformation on that data, so we can bring it directly into the gold warehouse. That's not necessarily always the case. You might want to bring it into bronze and do transformations and keep it in, but in this case, we're just going to bring it straight into gold because we're happy that we're confident in the data and the data validation that's occurred before the user's been able to submit the data. It's asking for connection settings, so I'll just go into my admin center and get the URL for the Power Apps environment that it sits in. So there you can see the environment URL. So just copy that URL, put it in the connection settings, and then when I click next, it will give me a full list of all the all the tables that are in that Dataverse environment. So we'll just scroll through and find the accident log, so that all the custom tables prefix CR71E. you'll see the data coming across from Dataverse with all the columns. Click create. That'll give me a preview of the data. Now I can still, this is a data flow, so I can still do some manipulation of the data here if I wanted to, and I'm okay. I'm happy loading it as it is. So I can just click publish. That'll save the data flow, and then we'll see that data flow is refreshing the data. And what that'll do is it'll load that data into the Gold warehouse, and that'll be available for reporting. We can add that data into into a model if we wanted to, or just have this flat data available for users to be able to query. So you can see there, yeah, it's pulled all of the data across into Fabric. So that's me finished. Alex, I'll let you take over this bit now.
Awesome. Well, I might need you for a couple of questions in a minute. We've got a couple of minutes for Q&A. I appreciate we're now out of time, so we are slightly over. We've just got one quick question on when pulling data from Fabric into Power Apps, is that data read-only in Power Apps?
Yes, in the virtual table it is, yes.
Yeah.
There is alternative ways of doing it. It depends on your use. It really depends on your use case. If it's master data that you're pulling across, you don't want it depends what you want to do with it. Do you just want it to be a read-only copy of that, and you trust Fabric to be the main the major source, or you can bring that data into Power Apps and then build pipelines between Fabric if you want people to be able to update that master data and make it available in Fabric. So in the scenario that we just did there, yeah, it's read-only.
It's read-only, but you can create rules to write back and things. So
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, thanks so much for that, Gareth. Hopefully that's covered a lot of questions already in that session for the content. But one thing I will just point out, I did put a message in the chat. If you did want to download the slide deck ahead of us sort of sending it out or requesting it, you can click on the little paper clip where it says, materials. And then within there, it will say Exploring Power Platform PDF. And then you can click the ellipses and you'll be able to download that file today whilst you're in the webinar. A couple of things just to point out. So we have got some upcoming events around this sort of topic. So tomorrow is our first Power BI training for beginners through the Climber Academy. That is a trainer-led session, and I think it lasts around 2.5 hours. There may be a couple of seats left on that, but I know it is pretty full already. And then Gareth sort of mentioned it in the session. We have got another webinar coming up in a couple of weeks, which is a live demo, and we've got Virgin Wines joining us, who's the customer we've been working with. And what we've built for them is a custom Power Apps solution to be able to monitor warehouse efficiencies. So as Gareth sort of mentioned, I think the platform that they were using, it was north of 6 figures for a load of customization to a tool, which then they weren't able to report on. They weren't able to get data out of it quickly. So we've been able to build them a fully custom solution that's available on tablets, and they can sort of change what they're doing. I won't go into too much detail because you'll not join the webinar, but that would be a really good one, I think, if you are wanting to see a live demonstration of a Power App that we've built. And also we've got the CTO at Virgin Wines joining us on that session to talk about how well that's been implemented by the business and the sort of benefits that it's brought. So please do register for that. You can actually click, I think, on the once you download the PDF, these are clickable links. There's hyperlinks to these sessions. This session has been recorded, so for all the attendees that have joined us today, thank you ever so much for taking the time out your afternoon and joining us. We will share this via email in the coming days, so you can share it with your colleagues. And for any questions following this, please do feel free to reach out to either myself or Gareth, because we would love to obviously be able to have a conversation around what you're looking to do with either option. So anything else? I think the Q&A's all complete, so there's no additional questions in there. And I think that's all from us. Thanks ever so much for your time today.